Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise again, Mr. Deputy, on though a rainy day in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, still a beautiful day, thanking Almighty God for giving me the breath and the opportunity to wake up in what I constantly believe in my heart is the greatest country in the world, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And to be a citizen of this great country continues to be indeed an honor and a privilege to represent the great people of the constituency of St. Barnabas. And just constantly reminded, Mr. Deputy, as I'm sure we all do, that I need God just as much on my best day, as it's said, and that I need him on my worst day, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, this debate today is a very important debate considering what the Commonwealth of the Bahamas as a society has been dealing with for many years, for decades. And as we continue to debate different issues in this place, and while all issues are very important to the development and advancement of our people, there are some pieces of legislation and certain issues that no doubt transcend others because of the magnitude of its impact and the magnitude of the need to address that issue because of its impact on the Bahamian people, on how we live, on how we interact, and how we behave, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I stand here as a husband, as a father of 4 beautiful daughters, as a nephew of 9 aunts, and as a son. As I'm sure other members here think about how vulnerable children have been in our country to violence, women have been and continue to be, and what we have an opportunity to do in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to continue to protect those who suffer at the hands of every sort of violence in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Mr. Deputy. But Mr. Deputy, as I stand here, and I often say this, that because there is a government and there is an opposition, oftentimes, I'm not complaining, you have to be a big boy about this. Oftentimes, what you say will only be seen through a political lens because to a large degree, while this is governance and this is service, politics is intersected in there. And that is unfortunate. But it does not mean that you should not push ahead and say what you believe in your heart and try as best as you can to be sincere with the hope, prayerful hope, that the Bahamian people who are watching and even your colleagues will see and hear the sincerity of your words and not assign any political agenda to those. Mr. Deputy, I stand here this morning deeply concerned about the fact that we are moving forward on a piece of legislation where some major stakeholders have expressed concerns, enough where they have conveyed the need for us to put this on pause, to reconcile the concerns that they have, Mr. Deputy. And there is no doubt, Mr. Deputy, that there's a sense of urgency and has been a sense of urgency on this issue of violence in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, gender-based violence. But the urgency to deal with the issue should not diminish the need to get it right. Now, oftentimes we know in governance that there are times where you can pass a piece of legislation, and while you try to focus on the majority, because not every person will agree with every piece of legislation. So I stand here today, this morning, not being naive to say that every piece of legislation needs to get unanimous support or overwhelming majority of support by persons out there. But fundamentally, Mr. Deputy, the stakeholders and those persons who are on the front line fighting for these issues, as in this case, a number of women's groups that have expressed a need for us to pause to reconcile certain issues. That is fundamental, Mr. Deputy. It is fundamental, and so I do believe, respectfully and humbly, that moving on with this legislation today and proceeding actually is an insult to those groups. And I would ask the government, plead to the government, to let us pause and engage those groups. We are not here for us. We are not here for us, Mr. Deputy. All of us in many different variations have said, which is true, that we represent the voices of the people we represent. We represent the voices of the Bahamian people. So we are not here for us. So with that being principally said, Mr. Deputy, how can we then ignore the voices of the very same constituent that we are saying that this legislation is for, when the constituents have said, hold on, stop for a minute. See, Mr. Deputy, in my humble view, it does not matter if it's taken 1 day, 2 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks for concerns, objections, considerations to be brought forward. The point is, communications have been sent and certain things have been expressed relative to what we are seeking to do today in this Parliament. And so, Mr. Deputy, we should pause. I read, Mr. Deputy, the Tribune article, May 25th, 2023, where it's entitled Protection Against Violence Bill Tabled. The Director of Equality Bahamas called it an insult to work done by the National Task Force on Gender-Based Violence and the strategic plan to address GBV issues that the committee produced, citing their concerns, or one of their concerns, or a number of concerns. She goes on to say, tabling the bill without sharing it with non-governmental organizations with the technical expertise to review and benchmark it alongside international human rights standards. Mr. Deputy. In their statement, Mr. Deputy, no less than 6 women's groups said the House of Assembly is set to begin debate on the Protection Against Violence Bill 2023 on Thursday, July 27, 2023. This bill is not the bill that the women's rights groups worked on for more than a decade. The bill we worked on and consented to was the Gender-Based Violence Bill. This bill was replaced at the last minute with the Protection Against Violence Bill. The new bill does not contain key provisions that would further help protect women and girls from violence. These provisions were in the Gender-Based Violence Bill. We call on the government to suspend debate on this bill and to present to Parliament the Gender-Based Violence Bill that so many women worked hard on over the many years. And not to be dramatic, Mr. Deputy, not to be dramatic, but for a group of constituents who have been battling with the veil of silence and, to a large degree, not being heard in many respects. This is another instance, I would suggest, where expressions are being made, advanced, articulated, but yet by us proceeding today, we are not listening to the very constituents that we are saying we are here today to protect, Mr. Deputy. Their bill. It is their bill, Mr. Deputy. It is their bill. We're not here for us. I am not here for me. I'm here for the people of St. Barnabas and the Bahamian people at large. But, Mr. Deputy, what is also mind-boggling to me, and a bit disheartening to me, truly, is that many days we've come in here and pieces of legislation that have been tabled and did not proceed. Mr. Deputy, in this session, there have been 7 bills that have been withdrawn and replaced. 7 bills have been withdrawn and replaced. And I'm sure, I can guarantee, that definitely they were withdrawn and replaced to make the bill better for those who benefit primarily and predominantly from the bill. Central Bank Act.
Over and over, 3 times.
The Boat Registration Act, right? The Tourism Development Corporation of the Bahamas Fund. The Central Bank Act, a bill to amend the Central Bank Act. And on and on and on. Who are we doing this for? We aren't doing this for us. They have expressed, once we strip away the politics as best as we can, and those biased inclinations that we tend to embrace, all of us sometimes, the truth is, who we are doing this for have major concerns. So why not pause? This isn't about the opposition. It's not about the government. This is about the persons who this bill will affect.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for West Grand Bahama.
Existing corporation's feed has been frozen since Wayne Monroe was speaking, member for Freetown. So, Mr. Deputy, may I ask that we take the break now? Whilst we can take a look, let's take a 15-minute break to see what is going on, and then we'll be able to return in 15 minutes.
Okay. We'll take a 15-minute recess.
Just to see what's going on with the broadcasting situation. We'll take a...
Is there a second now?
No.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of the House be suspended for 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Because of the break in transmission, I believe that we are duty-bound, Mr. Deputy, to retrace my steps, if you will, in terms of my contribution to this debate, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, because of the need to ensure that I let the Bahamian people know from which vantage point and perspective I was coming from, in terms of my initial thoughts as I stood here, and to contextualize my contribution thus far. The point was being made, Mr. Deputy, and a press release was read earlier from a number of women's groups about their concern about this bill, and the fact that there should be a pause because there are a number of concerns that they wish us as a body, the government, to consider. And one of the things that I emphasize, Mr. Deputy, as I just go over the initial statement for the edification of the Bahamian public who were lost during the transmission, Mr. Deputy. It says that this bill is not the bill that the women's rights groups worked on for more than a decade. The bill we worked on and consented to was the gender-based violence bill. This bill was replaced at the last minute with the Protection Against Violence bill. The new bill does not contain key provisions that would further help protect women and girls from violence. These provisions were in the gender-based violence bill. We call on the government to suspend debate on this bill and to present to the Parliament the gender-based violence bill that so many Bahamian women worked hard on over the many years. Mr. Deputy, as was said earlier, anytime that we come in here, it is not for us. It is for the people that we represent in our constituencies and by extension, and ultimately, Bahamians across the length and breadth of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I'll just wait, Mr. Deputy, so I don't have to repeat myself. Tell me, Chair.
All the time. Okay. We can break for the week. The chair recognizes the honourable member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Mr. Deputy, I just checked again. We're still not up. Please allow for 10 minutes for us to check one more time.
Thank you, honourable member.
If we come back and it's not on, then we'll go for the suspension for this summer break.
Yeah. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the business of the House be suspended for 10 minutes. As many as are in favor will remain seated.
We have a, please, we have a,
The motion is carried. The business of the House stands suspended for 10 minutes. The third time should be the charm. Honourable member, the chair recognizes the honourable member for St. Barnabas.
Thank you very much, Mr.
We are
Deputy.
going to give you 30 minutes.
Say it again, Mr. Deputy.
We're going to give you 30 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Deputy, thank you very much. Appreciate the chair. Mr. Deputy, the importance of this debate today forces me again to go back just another step to what I was reading before the break, which was an initial statement by a number of women's groups relative to this process today, Mr. Deputy, citing that this bill, this is from the women group, the Pros Protection Against Violence Bill passage, Mr. Deputy. This bill is not the bill that women's rights groups worked on for more than a decade. The bill we worked on and consented to was the gender-based violence bill. This bill was replaced at the last minute with the Protection Against Violence bill. The new bill does not contain key provisions that would further help protect women and girls from violence. These provisions were in the gender-based violence bill. We call on the government to suspend debate on this bill and to present to Parliament the gender-based violence bill that so many Bahamian women worked hard on over the many years. Mr. Deputy, earlier this morning, I made a point, in my humble opinion, that time after time we have come in here on a number of occasions, even in this session, and we have withdrawn bills, put in new ones, because we felt that there was a way to make the bill better. And so what a number of the women groups are saying is that there is a way for us to make this bill better. And they specifically cite the original drafted bill, Mr. Deputy.
What does it say?
Mr. Deputy, in this session, as I pointed out, Mr. Deputy, in this session, Mr. Deputy, there have been 7 bills withdrawn and replaced in this session. 7 bills that this Parliament has withdrawn and replaced. At least. And so what we are saying today, on behalf of the women out there and the persons who have been subjected to violence, and on behalf of the groups that want this to be paused as we move on, is that every day we are making decisions in here to make something better, but yet the government has still decided to move on with it, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I will read into the record as well the most updated press release from Women United, Mr. Deputy. This isn't about the opposition or the government. If we are in fact saying that we are doing this for a group of persons, constituents, then we should make sure that they themselves are satisfied with the way that we are approaching it. We're not doing it for us. So this recent press release from Women United says the House of Assembly is set to begin debate on the Protection Against Violence Bill 2023 on Thursday, July 27, 2023. This bill is not the bill that women's rights groups worked on for more than a decade. The bill we worked on and consented to was the Gender-Based Violence Bill. No, this is a new statement. This bill was replaced at the last minute with the Protection Against Violence Bill. The new bill does not contain key provisions that would further help protect women and girls from violence. These provisions were in the Gender-Based Violence Bill. We call on the government to suspend debate on this bill and to present to Parliament a Gender-Based Violence Bill that so many Bahamian women have worked hard on over the many years. The PAV bill is being given the rush treatment in the face of our demands for the passage of the GBV bill. Apart from specific concerns, none of us have had a chance to really study and appreciate what was removed from the Gender-Based Violence Bill and why it was removed. Meanwhile, this is the statement from Women United. Listen. Meanwhile, the GBV bill has been in draft form and consulted on for many years. We want the bill that we knew and that empowered NGOs more and with more autonomy than that is a GBV bill. Finally, for those that may have concerns about the use of the word gender, please note that in the GBV bill, gender is defined to mean male or female and the role individuals play in society as a result of their sex or status. Why is more than a decade of work being thrown down the drain and trimmed down bill being rushed through? Ask again, why is more than a decade of work being thrown down the drain and this trimmed down bill being rushed through? It is of note that in the preamble of the new bill, it states that among its purposes is to enable the Bahamas to fulfill certain obligations arising under regional and international treaties and for matters connected therewith. If that is the objective and concern ahead of WAM, which is the Commonwealth Women's Affairs Ministerial Meeting, then the objective can be fulfilled by immediate passage of the original bill, the GBV bill. Give us the GBV bill. Mr. Deputy, this is the original draft of which this statement refers to, and this is the present bill. Clear difference, Mr. Deputy. Clear difference,
30
Mr. Deputy.
page different because of
30-page difference.
Nomenclature.
This is the bill that they want. And Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy, this here, Mr. Deputy, is the National Task Force for Gender-Based Violence, right? Strategic Plan. Chairperson, Justice Ruby M. Nottage, retired, and Deputy Chairperson, Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson, and Dr. Robin Roberts. And this was done under the former Progressive Liberal Party government. Right? So, I intend to read the foreword of this strategic plan because, Mr. Deputy, this plan is in fact the precursor to the original drafted bill, Mr. Deputy. And so the foreword says, Mr. Deputy, in July 2012, the government agreed that the Commonwealth of the Bahamas should participate in the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, strengthening state accountability and community action for ending violence against women project, which has been implemented in some 10 countries in the Caribbean. It aims to end gender-based violence through strengthened and responsive state and civil action. In July 2013, the government of the Bahamas launched a national task force to oversee the development, implementation, and coordination of a national strategic plan to address gender-based violence. This document, the Strategic Plan to Address Gender-Based Violence in the Bahamas, represents a blending of these two initiatives and is a testament to the commitment, dedication, and voluntarism of a small group of persons who make up the National Task Force. It goes on that the document clearly defines gender-based violence and the scope and depth of the problem. It provides the rationale and approach of the development of a national strategy to address gender-based violence, lays out the structure of a GBV authority, and lists 10 programs, Mr. Deputy, to be addressed in the first year of the establishment of the GBV authority. This landmark report will serve as a major resource for many in the Bahamas as well as regional and international entities. It was very well received by the Cabinet of the Bahamas, and expectations are high for its early implementation and the positive impact that it will have in addressing gender-based violence in the Bahamas. Signed, the Honorable Melanie S. Griffin, MP, Minister of Social Services and Community Development, July 6, 2015. So, Mr. Deputy, this here, under the former PLP government, again, was the precursor for the drafting of this bill in which all of the women groups are concerned about and wish to be brought to this Parliament. Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy, this original bill comes from the womb, has been said, of civil society. And it's been soaked, Mr. Deputy, it has been soaked by the cries, the tears of many victims of crime, particularly women and young girls, the vulnerabilities, the struggles, the despair. And all they are asking for, not the opposition, Mr. Deputy, please, Mr. Deputy, thank you. Thank you.
Order, members.
All they are asking for, not the opposition, not the Free National Movement, the people that are on the front line feel as though that they are not being heard. That is the reality. 6 people? Okay. So the government, Mr. Deputy, is discounting the voices and the concerns and the considerations of the people that matter most.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
But we're not discounting any voice. All the voices have been heard. That's why we're here today.
But that's not true.
And this is over the 10-year period. That's why all the voices have been heard today. That's why we're here today. And we have discussed this and other issues, and that's why we are here today. So no one is being discounted.
Thank you, honourable member.
Mr. Deputy, as I said, This is not about this member. This is not about the opposition. This is not about the government. This is about the concerns expressed by important stakeholders, Mr. Deputy. Important stakeholders. And Mr. Deputy, you know, I talked about this Parliament having withdrawn bills to make them better. And you know, most recently, and this is what, quite honestly and humbly, the Bahamian people think about, for example. Right? In the middle of the budget debate, as we talked about the many issues and the amount of taxes affecting the Bahamian people, you remember when we were having that debate?
Of course.
Right? Carnival president hoping for delay in departure tax increase.
Brakes
Okay?
on.
That was June 19th, 2023. In the middle of the most important debate that we take part in as a country, the budget, right? Carnival president hoping for delay.
Brakes.
When the Bahamian people were pleading for the government to take the taxes off of us, Carnival president hoping for delay in departure tax increase. That was June 19, 2023. June 23, 2023, to appease Carnival, right? To make a change, right? In some legislative movement to slow it down, same thing that these groups are asking for. Deputy Prime Minister, cruise tax adjustment delayed to January 2024.
Brakes.
So the government put on the legislative brakes on the implementation of taxes. On the implementation of taxes, the government put on brakes to satisfy a strategic partner. And actually, you know, I noted. I noted. The Deputy Prime Minister said that they being Carnival Cruise Lines, they have made certain representations. We've taken those into consideration. So the women groups have made certain representations that they're asking the government in this Parliament to take into consideration. He further states, the Deputy Prime Minister does, I don't have anything else to say at this point except that they are important partners. That they are important partners as all of our stakeholders in the cruise business. As all the stakeholders in the cruise business. The point I'm just making, Mr. Deputy, is that this Parliament and the government has the ability to fast forward legislation. As I've said before in past debates, particularly those that relate to the financial services industry, we come in here very, very quickly and make adjustments. So the point is, it can be done. It can be done. And the women and young girls of this country, they are asking for the government to just slow down. Slow down. That's what they're asking the government. It is not us. It is not us. It is not us. We are simply emphasizing what these groups have asked for. Mr. Deputy.
They could do this in literally a couple of days.
Mr. Deputy, what is the rush? What is the rush? As I said earlier, what I said earlier, Mr. Deputy, right? There is a sense of urgency, but we should not allow the sense of urgency to diminish in getting it right. And that's what we are asking on behalf of many of the victims out there, all right, to get it right. They want us to get it right, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, you know, a very strategic look at some of the things that, some of the concerns, and there are many, okay? There are many differences in this draft 2016 and this present bill, Mr. Deputy. One of the things that
We work for the people, we don't work for ourselves. You should talk to the people. That's what we're telling you. Why to talk to the people? Many of them haven't even met the minister with responsibilities for the sector this bill is coming from. You and the PM were sent on assignment. Even the minister didn't bring the bill.
one of the things that
What the
has
minister
been
said. Could you imagine that?
one of the things
What the
that has
minister-
been
what the minister
omitted,
said?
Mr. Deputy,
They chose
is
a litigator now.
in this draft
To bring in.
a relief from certain taxes and duties, Mr. Deputy. Also, there's a number of concerns that
No deals.
the increase of bureaucracy and the power given to the minister as opposed to fortifying the NGOs and their ability to bring the necessary relief to victims in a way that they know how. And there are a number of issues that other members of the opposition, including the leader of the opposition, will talk about. Why are we rushing this? Why don't we slow it down to make the changes that need to happen? Mr. Deputy, you know, we know that the violence in our society is something that we all abhor and hate, and that we've been dealing with for a long, long time. Just the other day, an elderly woman was raped. An elderly woman was raped. And I am not about to say, obviously everybody is outraged. Everybody is outraged by that. Little girls being raped. Outraged. Everybody should be outraged, and we are outraged. And even when the discussion is out there, about question of leniency and the severity of prison time and so forth, the vast majority of Bahamians feel that it's time for us to rectify the issue, but to do it in the right way and in the proper way that brings justice, real justice, to the many victims of violence here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I do want to recognize, Mr. Speaker, with your leave, the presence of Ms. Gibson, who's the head of FOAM, and we know all of the great work that you and your team have been doing for the last 10+ years. We continue to salute you and all of those persons on the front line of this issue that continues to take away from our families, to take away from the vulnerable in our society. We have an opportunity to do it right. And all is being asked of the government is to just put on the brakes, to slow down, just as the government has delayed on many other things, to make it right. This isn't about being first, this is about making it right, Mr. Deputy. And Mr. Deputy, as I take my seat, Mr. Deputy, I hear the members, though not on their feet, I hear the members try to make this about the opposition, I wish that the government would reach out to the many women groups. And you know something, Mr. Deputy? You know what's interesting? Mr. Deputy? In this objects and reasons, right? In this objects and reasons, Mr. Deputy, I know something very peculiar, not peculiar, but very interesting. It says that this present bill, also seeks to fulfill the various obligations of the Bahamas under the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, 1981, CEDAW, and the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women, 1994. Mr. Deputy, included, Mr. Deputy, in those that have endorsed, it says endorsed organizations and individuals who signed on to the press release that I just read, where they cited, similarly, right, it is of note that in the preamble of the new bill, it states that among its purposes is to enable the Bahamas to fulfill certain obligations arising under regional and international treaties and for matters connected therewith. If that is the objective and concern ahead of WAM, then the objective can be fulfilled by the immediate passage of the original bill. And one of the parties concerned in signing this, Mr. Deputy, is on the committee of CEDAW. The point is that the government is making the case that this particular bill meets all of the international obligations, but yet persons who represent the international organizations that the government has cited in its bill has said to the government to slow down. Mr. Deputy. So, no matter how you look at it, Mr. Deputy, there's enough justifiable reason for the government to slow down and make it right. Mr. Deputy, as I take my seat, Mr. Deputy, my heart and my prayers go out to the thousands of Bahamian families who have been impacted by any form of violence in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. There is no doubt that the women and girls of our country deserve as much protection, better protection, and better shelter, Mr. Deputy. And the only analogy I would use in this regard, although as you go along, you try to make a shelter better, in some cases, having a shelter with holes is no shelter at all. So we must do our best to get it right, as opposed to saying something was done. Let it be done correctly and most importantly, to the satisfaction of those that we say we are doing it for, who have expressed concerns. This isn't for our own ego. This isn't for the government's own ego. This is for those victims. And the persons that represent them on the front line. And those persons have said, wait, we need to talk some more to get it right. Mr. Deputy, thank you so much, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Honorable